Good morning, hello, namaste, and welcome to a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart. I'll begin with a poem of mine. We'll start the talk and finish with a short meditation towards the end. So make yourself comfortable, however you want to sit, stand, walk, any traditional way to meditate that we have. And today I wanted to talk all about what it means to embrace the mystery. Today's poem is called The Unknown. The truth is, we don't know. We don't know the future, the answer, the real reason why we're here, or why some people do what they do. But the world was never meant to be explained. So for once, give up the endless seeking that only ties knots into your shoulders. Let go of any desire to figure it all out that keeps the world at an observable distance. Stop trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle, and for once, rest. Completely, naively, beautifully rest. Let the muddy waters of questioning come to stillness. Watch the silt settle down and rest in peaceful clarity. Forgive yourself. Forget yourself. Forget everything else. And completely, naively, beautifully, marvelously rest. There's a story I love to tell in my yoga classes where Ramana Maharshi was asked by one of his students. He was asked, will this practice of yoga give me knowledge of my previous lives? And it's true, when you go into certain yogic texts, you learn all about the siddhis, Siddhis, which are the manifestations or magical powers. And you see extraordinary feats for the human to attain. We can levitate, you can become very small, you can teleport yourself across the room, you can stop your breathing, you could stop your heart. So too, some say that you have knowledge of all your previous incarnations upon awakening. And when Ramana Maharshi was asked this question, he looked at the questioner and said, do you even know your current life? Do you know this life right here? And we can get so caught up in great philosophical and spiritual questions about the world, when really our most fundamental task is to get in touch with this life that we are here right now. So even Jack Kornfield likes to talk about one of his teachers who would simply take a stick at the beginning of class and he would bang it on the ground and he would say, what is this? What is this? What is this? Implying, of course, what is this? What is this life that we are a part of? What is this thing that we verbalize as a stick? What does it mean to be here? What is this reality? And this is the invitation. There's another story of a famous rabbi who was on his deathbed. And all the villagers wanted to have their last few words with this rabbi. So everyone was lined up to speak with him. And first person at the front of the line says, tell us, Rabbi, what's your final words of wisdom? And the rabbi said, you know, life is like a fountain. And the person at the front of the line heard that and they turned behind them and they were like, life is like a fountain. And the message passed all the way along. Life is like a fountain. Life is like a fountain. Life is like a fountain. Finally, a young child at the very back of the line said, huh, why? And everyone in line was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. And it went up, why, up to the front. And the person at the front was like, but why, Rabbi? Why is life like a fountain? And the rabbi thought about it for a little bit and said, you know, maybe it's not like a fountain. And that's the answer. We don't know. This is what we sometimes call the beginner's mind. And I find this word is tossed out a lot, and I like to refer to it as the don't know mind. We don't know. We don't know what happens after we die. We don't know what this reality is. We might have certain ideas, but fundamentally, we don't know. And part of our task is to embrace this mystery with the don't know mind, with the beginner's mind. And one of the most fundamental questions we can ask on the path is, who am I? right? And we would say that the reason we are stuck in bondage, we are stuck in this endless wheel of karma and reincarnation, is because we don't know ourselves. There's a joke where Descartes goes up to a horse and he says to the horse, I think, therefore I am. And the horse says, You're what? I don't think anyone here would disagree that you exist, that you certainly are, but do we know what we are? And an interesting thing about it is, even right now, I'm teaching anatomy for a yoga teacher training. And what's always surprises me about teaching anatomy is how little we know about ourselves. We can go through 18, 20 years of education and not even know what muscle we use to breathe. So even people who've been in bodies for 30, 40, 50 years, I sometimes open up with some very simple questions, such as what muscles do you use to breathe, such as what muscles take our arm up to the sky, such as how many bones do you have or how many muscles do you have? And I was in the same boat before I got into this world of yoga. I was also lost in thought, as we say, living from the shoulders up, as we say, not even realizing I was in a body, almost feeling like the body is just something you kind of lug around and take with you, just like a vehicle for the mind to experience the more important things in life. And this is the common human experience. We do live shoulders up. We do live caught up in our own mind, caught off from our bodies, but also not in touch with our bodies in reality as it is. We don't even know some of the most fundamental facts about our body. So, one of the most deepest spiritual questions we can begin to ask ourselves is, who am I? And the word ego is tossed around a lot, kind of like the word beginner's mind nowadays. And it can mean really different things in different contexts. But in yoga psychology, what we call the ego in Sanskrit, it would be the ahamkara, which fundamentally is identity. It is essentially who you think you are. So if you were to meet somebody new, of course, you ask them, well, who are you? And they will give you all sorts of autobiographical information, right? This is my name, this is my address, this is my job, this is when I was born, all sorts of information. But we know that said autobiographical information doesn't encapsulate the totality of who a person is. And obviously, our thoughts about ourselves can't encapsulate also who we are. Now, some would say that who you are is who is looking for who you are, or that we are what we seek. And that one of the main reasons that we don't know ourselves is because we can't know ourselves. Just as a knife can't cut itself, and just as fire can't burn itself, so too the I, that is the seer or the watcher, will never be an object of its own knowledge, or to put it a different way, the divine will never be an object of its own knowledge. So this is our inquiry. As we get in touch with this life, we have to think about who we are. There's another story of a young student in the Zen tradition who goes to his teacher and asks, what happens after we die? And the teacher says, I don't know. What a lovely beginner's mind he has. But the student, as happens in stories like this, doesn't appreciate the answer and says, what are you talking about? I thought you are supposed to be an enlightened monk, aren't you? And he says, yes, I am, but not a dead one. And this is the don't know mind. None of us know. We don't know what happens after we die. We might have some ideas, but we have very little verifiable proof, which is why some of the Zen koans are simply questions around these things. We often think of Zen koans as sort of unanswerable questions, like what is the sound of one hand clapping? And really, the purpose of a Zen koan is really just to get you to the limits of what your mind can attain. So, other Zen koans do deal with this reality of birth and death and ask questions like, who were you before you were born? Or who were you before your parents were born? Or what was your faith before you were born? And then that taps into this fundamental idea of who we are. So even in the Tibetan Book of the Dead features one of my favorite quotes, which is, O nobly born, O you of glorious origins, remember your true radiant nature. Trust it and return to it. It is home. I love that final line, that it is home. Our true self is our home. And the rational mind don't get there. The knowing mind won't take us there. Just as water cannot rise above its own level, so too the mind will never rise above the level of thinking and thought. So you don't know yourself because we can't know ourselves, because the mind is limited and our true nature, you might say, is limitless. So not only do we not know ourselves or even some of the most fundamental aspects of our body, but we're not in touch with the world. I sometimes think of humanity as this big baton race. Like you came into this earth and you were handed the baton of humanity and you just started running. And it's so easy to confuse ourselves to think that we know and understand the world. And really, there's very little we understand about it. If you were to go 500 years in time, could you invent a phone? Could you invent electricity? Could you make a computer? Could you make a car? Could you make any of the things that we surround ourselves with? And the answer, of course, is no. We're just given these things. Now, you might think somebody knows it somewhere in the world, but just like the monk banging with the stick, asking, "What is this?" we have to consider how much can we fully know about the world. So even another question I sometimes ask my students in anatomy is essentially, is there any human being on this planet that can even fully comprehend a single blade of grass? And you might think, well, a biologist out there, I'm sure, is an expert in grass and all the grasses of the world, but do they fully understand the blade of grass? And the answer, of course, is no. We can have certain models and certain ideas, but we're not omniscient. We don't know to a molecule exactly how a blade of grass works. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't have answers about your own body, don't blame the doctor. There's very little we know and even can know about the world. So James Joyce says that there are 3 rules for writing the perfect novel. Fortunately, no one knows what they are. We don't know. Wouldn't it be nice to know the perfect rules for creating the perfect world that we want to live in? So we don't know ourselves, we don't know this world, and we don't even know the future. We don't know what happens after we die, certainly, but we don't even know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, what's going to happen in 10 minutes, what the future holds, what tomorrow holds, what's going to happen next. So I sometimes think of this poem by Rumi, and he wrote, "I feel like the ground, astonished at what the atmosphere brought to it. What I know is growing inside me. Rain makes every molecule pregnant with a mystery." I love that. Every molecule is pregnant with mystery. And of course, just as we don't know this world, we don't know ourselves, you could say we don't know the divine. In fact, when I interviewed a rabbi on my own podcast, she referred to this entity, this what you might call divine, as the great unknowable unknown, which I loved. The great unknowable unknown. And you might have also heard the story of a man who's running from wolves and he reaches the edge of a cliff and decides to jump, and he jumps off the cliff and is hanging for dear life onto a branch. And he looks down, sees nothing but a fall, looks up, sees nothing but wolves. Finally, has a bit of a change of tune in circumstances like this and says, "Please, God, please, can you help me?" Suddenly, he hears a booming voice. "Yes, son, I'm here." He says, "Oh my gosh, thank God, thank God. Tell me, what should I do? Please help me." And God says, "Let go of the branch. I will catch you." The man pauses for a second. And, "Is anyone else there?" he asks. Meaning, Do we know? Like, we might believe or think about a certain divine entity existing, but when the time comes and we have to trust in this idea, will we let go of the branch, or will we look for something more firm that we can stand on? And this, I think, is such a crucial part of the spiritual path. This idea that our task is to embrace the mystery. And I think a lot of people, and particularly humans throughout time, have forgotten this message and have seen their particular religion or their particular view of the divine as an enforcement of certainty. And we all have seen the violence, the war, the suffering that has happened by people, saying that their view or even their strict interpretation of a few words of a particular text is the only right definition. So there's another story. This one is by the comedian Emo Phillips. And he goes, I was walking across a bridge one day, and I saw a man on the edge about to jump off. So I ran over and said, Stop, don't do it. Why shouldn't I? He asked. And I said, Well, there's so much to live for. And he said, Like what? I said, Well, are you religious or atheist? He said, Religious. I said, Me too. Are you Christian or Buddhist? He said, Christian. I said, Me too. Are you Catholic or Protestant? He said, Protestant. I said, Me too. Are you Methodist or Baptist? He said, Baptist. I said, Wow, me too. Are you Baptist Church of God or Baptist Church of the Lord? He said, Baptist Church of God. I said, Me too. Are you Original Baptist Church of God or are you Reformed Baptist Church of God? He said, Reformed Baptist Church of God. I said, Me too. Are you Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation of 1879, or Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation of 1915? And he said, Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation of 1915. To which I said, Die, heretic scum, and I pushed him off. I don't condone violence, but I love that joke because it expresses the violence that is done with others who might not believe with our views, the views that we hold so tightly onto. So our task, if we are to find peace in the world, if we are to find peace of ourselves, is to recognize that the spiritual path has as much unknowing as it does knowing, has as much learning as it does letting go. It involves recognizing that there is more to the world than what we can know, and that we are here to embrace the full mystery of life, both love and suffering, both birth and death, both certainty and doubt. And this is what wisdom is, both knowing and unknowing. As Henry Adams put it, for after all, man knows mighty little and may someday learn enough of his own ignorance to fall down again and pray. So there are also a number of stories about the spiritual path that represent this idea of letting go so tightly onto our rigid ideas. For example, those academic professors, they get a bad rap in the spiritual world. So of course, there is the story of the professor, many PhDs on his wall. He goes to the Zen master and asks them to teach him about Zen. And the master says, Of course, I'd be happy to teach you. Let us first sit down and have a cup of tea. So the master sits down and pours a cup of tea. And as the master is pouring the tea into the cups, the academic asks all sorts of questions. He's like, What's the nature of this? What's the nature of this? What's the answer to this Zen koan? What's the answer to this Zen koan? And as he's asking his questions, the monk keeps pouring and pouring and pouring until the cup fills up and then the cup overflows. And then at that point, the professor is stopped, is surprised, and he says, Whoa, whoa, what are you doing? Why are you filling up my cup so much? And of course, this is the lesson. And the Zen master says, This is your mind. This is your cup. It's so overflowing with knowledge. I have nothing to teach you. You must empty your cup first. So we have to empty our cup. We have to let go. We have to unknow on this path of knowing. And a text that I love that exemplifies this idea perfectly is a 14th century mystical Christianity text, literally known as the Cloud of Unknowing. And the unknowing in this case is represented by darkness. And it says that we have to reconcile ourselves to wait in this darkness as long as necessary. And the text expresses all sorts of lessons we've already talked about, that the divine is not to be found through rational discourse. No logical step is going to take you to knowledge of the divine. Fortunately, we have more tools at our disposal beyond the mind. We also have the heart. So this text has one of my most favorite rallying calls for the heart, where it says, I encourage you, bow eagerly to love. Follow its humble stirrings in your heart. Let it guide you in this life, and it will bring you safely to eternal bliss in the next. Love is the essence of all goodness. Without it, no kind work is ever begun or finished. Simply put, love is a goodwill in harmony with God. Hmm. And that's why I love this text so much, because it says once we practice the don't know mind, once we come into beginner's mind, we experience a number of other incredibly amazing shifts in our awareness. We can finally let go. We can finally relax. As John O'Donohue put it, we are so busy managing our lives, we forget this great mystery that we are involved in. Because we don't know what's going to happen in 10 minutes, let alone what's going to happen tomorrow, we can let go of our endless controlling attempts. We can let the great unknowable unknown take the wheel, so to speak. We can stop resisting. Usually we are resisting the way things are. In fact, as soon as I arrived to the studio today, I thought I had everything I needed for my talk. And forgot the most important thing, the laptop. I got the meditation cushion, I got the singing bowl. I forgot the laptop so I can connect with anybody in the world. And it was just another example that life doesn't always go the way that we want it to. And it will never go the way that we want it to, because we cannot control every variable in the world that affects our life. So we can relax and we can let go. And once we stop resisting life, we can get in touch with it as it is. So Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee wrote, "The world is not a problem to be solved. It is a living being to which we belong. The world is part of our own self, and we are part of its suffering wholeness. Until we get to the root of our image of separateness, there can be no healing. And the deepest part of our separateness from creation lies in our forgetfulness of its sacred nature, which is our own sacred nature." So as we do embrace the beginner's mind, as we do embrace the mystery, we begin to cultivate a very natural non-attachment to our tightly held ideas. And not only does that bring peace and relaxation, but it also brings love into our relationships. Even the Buddha said, and when I first heard this quote, I thought it was one of those made up Buddha quotes, but you go into the early text and sure enough, there it is that the Buddha said, people with strong opinions just go about the world bothering one another. And I think we've all experienced that. If you look in certain social media discourse, there's not a lot of don't know mind. There's a lot of people who think they're experts in whatever geopolitical conflict is happening in the day, or the person who last week was an expert on vaccine efficacy suddenly this week is an expert on the geopolitical conflict of the Middle East. And sure enough, the next week they'll insist upon their knowledge of another certain subject. But when we have don't know mind, we rest in the mystery. Another quote is, "The world is divided into people who think they are right." And that's it. That's the quote. That's the division. There's no other division. There's just increasing division to those who think that they are right. So this increases our capacity to love one another. And every human being who's in, say, a romantic relationship has to ask themselves a few fundamental questions. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Do you want to be correct, or do you want to be connected in your relationship? Once we practice don't know mind, we suddenly have a natural curiosity. We are suddenly able to listen to our partner and have a conversation with them where we're not trying to impose our reality on them, but recognize there are two realities here, and both of them are just as valid as the other one. So we can apply a genuine curiosity when we meet another human being, whether it's our partner or anybody else. We can just say, like, who are you? What is it like to be you? And once we kind of go into that curiosity, we realize there's so much we can learn from this world. Mary Oliver writes, "Truly, we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs, how rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising. How two hands touch, and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads." So I'm a big fan of mantras. I think mantras are a very powerful tool to bring into our meditation practice. There's all sorts of mantras that we can bring, like Om Namah Shivaya and Om Mani Padme Hum and Om Gate Gate Parasam Gate 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 Bodhi Swaha. These are lovely things to verbalize in our own head with each exhale of the breath. But I find the more simple we can get things, the more profound that they can be. So I'll offer you two very powerful mantras. The first one goes like this. Or maybe it's more of a, It's sort of that relaxation that brings a certain curiosity. Next time you're looking at a tree or a flower or a cloud, you can try that mantra. How did this cloud come to be? How did this tree come to be? How many leaves are on this tree? And it's a level of curiosity we can bring to all areas of our life when we do embrace the mystery. And I encourage you to try the mantra, for a few weeks. And then you might be able to move on to the next advanced mantra that I call the mantra of wow, where we shift from curiosity to wonder. We don't just look at the tree and the bird and the cloud and say, we say, wow, how lucky am I to experience this mystery of life. I will never fully understand a cloud or the bird or the trees or another human being, but I'm here to embrace all of it, the knowable and the unknowable, life and death, existence and non-existence, being and non-being. What a gift it is to be alive. All the wonders of the earth are here. All the miracles of life are here, all around us and in us. I think about this mantra, wow, a lot. And I remember really being able to see it for the first time because in San Francisco, we have a conference called Wisdom 2.0. There's a few things you can unpack about that title, but it's a great conference. It brings in both leaders in tech and then leaders in the Dharma. So you get to meet some of those big names in both industries. And I remember It was a 4-day weekend, and I want to be perfectly honest with you. I don't remember what anybody said. Even the big names in the Dharma and tech world. They all went up there, they all gave their speeches. Sometimes it was a discussion where they were interviewed and they gave their best answers to whoever was interviewing them. And I don't remember any of them. I do remember one person, a teacher I love. Perhaps you love him too, Ram Dass. Ram Dass, this is post-stroke Ram Dass. So he always chose his words very carefully and very slowly. And he wasn't even in person. They just zoomed him in. So they projected Ram Dass' beautiful face on this huge projector screen. And I just remember they turn on the video and Ram Dass staring at the camera, eyes open, mouth open, just going, wow. And he expressed how amazing and incredible it was that here he was in Hawaii, being able to connect with all of us in San Francisco. And what an amazing piece of technology that we have to be able to connect with anyone in the world, and just how incredible that is. And all we can say is, wow. And I really just feel he was in that state of mind. You might call it God consciousness, you might call it samadhi or moksha or liberation. That final peace and relaxation when we fully find ourselves with that beginner's mind, with that don't know mind, we just sit in awe and wonder of the world. And indeed, when you look at those great spiritual leaders, they're always so buoyant. You look at the Dalai Lama, you look at Ram Dass, they have this buoyant, youthful energy. So when we do cultivate this beginner's mind, we become like the novice, we become like the child that sees the world with fresh eyes. I have a couple poems. I only have time for one of them. I'll do a poem by Sandra Cisneros. She wrote, "When in doubt, wear fake leopard. When in doubt, err on the side of generosity. When in doubt, greet everyone as you would the Buddha. When in doubt, collect blessings from those who own nothing. When in doubt, absorb biographies to avoid life's major mistakes. When in doubt, make life's major mistakes. When in doubt, pay attention to the vendor shouting Dios, which is God in Spanish. When in doubt, carry a handkerchief and a fan. When in doubt, thank everyone twice. When in doubt, heed the clouds. When in doubt, sleep on it. When in doubt, treat all sentient and insentient beings as kin. When in doubt, forgive us our myopia, as we forgive those who are myopic against us. When in doubt, unreel your grief to a tree. There is no start, there is no finish. Everyone wins. When in doubt, remember this." And I think that's our human task. When we don't know, choose love. When the mind can only take us so far, see the world through eyes of compassion. When in doubt, be loving, be present, be compassionate. And with that don't know mind, we can rest. Let's come to a straight spine. Relax the shoulders. Rest the hands on the knees or in your lap, facing up or facing down. Take a few moments and take a few deep breaths. And let's try our first mantra. Or huh. With an open mind of curiosity, notice the breath. And see if you can discover something new about the breath. There was one teacher who would invite his longtime meditators, of 6 years, 6 months to say something new, to discover something new about the breath. So, with curiosity, what is this breath? What is this thing we call the breath? And next, try the mantra. Wow. An internal mantra of wow that sees the breath with wonder. If you are breathing, it means you are alive. It means you have this privilege to exist. And all the wonders of life are here. And experience this wonder of a breath. And they say, even if you take the statistics of how many atoms we inhale through the breath and how atoms distribute themselves into space, they say every breath will have a molecule that was also breathed by the Buddha, by Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, by Jesus, by Caesar. What a wonderful thing to experience, this breath, in this moment, with this gift of life. Truth is, we don't know. We don't know the future, the answer, the real reason why we're here, why some people do what they do. But the world was never meant to be explained. So for once, give up the endless seeking that only ties knots into your shoulders, and let go of any desire to figure it all out that keeps the world at an observable distance. Stop trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle, and for once, rest. And thank you for joining me today. Namaste.